so far are ranging from agriculture, ranging from hydrogen, as well as the discovery of oil and gas here in Namibia. But subsequent to the official talks in the Pohamba Hall, there will be a press conference where we will get clarity on a number of issues that have brought the two prime ministers to Namibia. So we are broadcasting live on all platforms. Well, if I can just share with you the programs of the two prime ministers, programs which have been made available to the media, that's now apart from State House, there will also be a business luncheon where the two prime ministers will engage the business, Namibian business people, as well as business people from their respective countries. That's in the afternoon today, and they will be accompanied by the Vice President, that's Nangolo Mbumba, at that business luncheon organized by the Namibia Investment Promotion and Development Board. So those are just some of the activities that are in the lineup for the one-day joint working visit of the two prime ministers, Prime Minister of Denmark and the Prime Minister of the Netherlands. Well, you see, at this point in time, Namibia is positioning itself and has set itself out to be a global leader in terms of energy transition, and that is now where the production of green hydrogen comes in. I see here on the program that there would be a visit by the prime ministers to the offices of Hyphen Energy. Now, Hyphen Energy is the company that has been selected as the preferred bidder for the manufacturing of green hydrogen. That's around the Tsautsaipa National Park, with production scheduled to start as from 2025 going into 2026. That's now where the two prime ministers, of course not to the park itself, but to their offices, to the offices of Hyphen here in Windhoek, where the two prime ministers will have discussions with officials here. And I must mention that they did open an office here, which is also good for Namibia and Europe, being in need of energy now more than ever, given the threats that were brought about by the Russia-Ukraine conflict. I must say that the interest of Namibia, or positioning itself as a leader in the energy transition sphere, has drawn interest not just from the Netherlands and Denmark, but the entire European bloc. Later on, I will be joined by the economic advisor, who is also the Green Hydrogen Commissioner of the country, to share more details on some of the discussions. I see that there would be a presentation around green hydrogen, as well as the talks on COP28. So I will be joined on that specific discussion. I'll be joined by James Nieuwpe, who is the Green Hydrogen Commissioner, who will share more information in that regard. We are still broadcasting live all the way from State House, where President Geingob is hosting the Prime Minister of Denmark, that's Mark Rutte, as well as the Prime Minister of Netherlands, Mette Frederiksen, for a one-day joint working visit. We will keep you up to date on all our platforms regarding the activities here at State House.
Well, Your Excellencies, the Prime Minister of Netherlands and Denmark, Deputy Prime Minister, Minister of International Relations and Cooperation, our side here, ministers, or many of them, would like to welcome you to Namibia. It's a very unique situation. We are very proud, but very unique situation, whereby you have two prime ministers.
Sorry.
Two prime ministers coming at the same time. It's unique. It never happened anywhere, I think. So we made a history. So welcome. We're very proud of that. It happened only in Namibia. Therefore, I would like to welcome both prime ministers to Namibia. Namibia is a country which believes in democracy, definitely. We went through a very difficult time to fight for our independence, as we already been touching on outside. So we value our democratic institutions, freedom of press. And therefore, governance architecture is in place.
here, and mine is simply to steer that body. And so far, it has worked wonders. I hope all of you will have the time to peruse and study how we can participate going forward. This is a country, 824,000 square kilometers in size. It has a 1,500 kilometers coastline and a 200-kilometer inland desert. So much of the potential is along that belt. I thank you, Your Excellency.
Thank you. Now, briefly.
Thank you, Your Excellency, and thank you, Prime Ministers, for coming to see us. We've put together a few slides that we'll go through briefly, of course, to illustrate to you, the work we've done, but also really where a lot of the partnership that really started off with the President and the Prime Minister of Netherlands, where that work has gotten us to. And of course, we look forward to building even deeper relationships with our friends from Denmark. We've already started that informally here at this end of the table. So typically, when we speak about green hydrogen in Namibia, it's always very useful to remind people that we're not looking to produce green hydrogen just for the sake of producing green hydrogen, but as you heard from the President, it is really to try and achieve this objective, which of course the President outlined at the United Nations General Assembly in September 2020. And within this one paragraph, he said a lot. In the first part of that paragraph, you will see that he mentioned that Namibia aspires to change the economic structure of the economy. You had just alluded to that. Higher middle income country, but of course, one of the highest level of Gini coefficient. And so we need, as the Minister of Finance had said, to introduce new engines of growth. The second part of that is a statement, Madam Prime Minister from Denmark, you alluded to as well. The President noted the importance of looking for innovative tools, innovative financial tools to mobilize capital into Namibia so that we don't overburden the fiscus, but at the same time, really pursue climate combating initiatives that help the first goal that the President mentioned. And then I think lastly, I'm very proud that, during this visit, we're also showcasing what obviously, the President was always a teacher and a professor. And if you see the last statement there, he says, African research and development will play a very key role in helping us achieve those first two objectives. And I think today, with TNO here, the NCRST from Namibia, UNAM, Radboud, Delft, and others as well, they actually anchor a lot of the R&D that makes it possible in order to actually innovate, as the President was asking us to do. And so, from those very eloquent words, it was up to some of us with a very minimal budget and having failed art in school to try and actually depict what this could look like in Namibia. So this was our humble first effort. But what one can see on this particular diagram is we knew that building these green hydrogen assets, as the Director General mentioned, along the desert coast of Namibia, would require the introduction of very strategic infrastructure. So for example, the port here would need to actually export a lot of those molecules that would be produced at the Lüderitz industrial site. At the same time, just as we were speaking to Elizabeth on this side, and I say to her, really next time we should co-present this particular presentation, but she was too shy to do it. Namibia also aspires to actually export these electrons, this excess electricity, into the Southern African power pool. And of course, Denmark and Netherlands are both working with South Africa to try and help with a just energy transition, of course, in South Africa. Denmark will be looking to export their excess electricity and molecules to Germany and to other countries as well. And so again, we think there are areas there of collaboration. On top of that, we really wanted to use a lot of this excess electricity to essentially house energy-intensive industry in Namibia. So in Roshpina, for example, we actually smelt zinc, and we produce some of the finest zinc in the world. But really, we stopped that activity because it was very energy intense. It needed about 180 megawatts worth of electricity, and we used to get that from Eskom. And of course, South Africa couldn't afford to do that anymore. So that's about an 11 billion Namibian dollar project that essentially is mothballed because there's no electricity. And so one can see that, yes, by looking to produce green hydrogen, you end up, diversifying your revenue sources from an export perspective. You end up helping your neighbors in becoming energy secure. And importantly as well, you start diversifying your own economic structure. It was very important, of course, to show the Namibian people and our visitors that our project is very big for us, but of course it's one of many, many other projects in the world. And what you can see from this map is there are really two large global demand centers. There is Europe, and of course we have a very strong delegation from Europe today, and of course there is Northern Asia as well. And so one of the key things here with the demand center in Europe is to realize that while Europe, sort of industrial hubs like Germany will be consuming a lot of this electricity, the Danes, for example, would actually be producing some of these molecules as well. Denmark actually has like an offshore green hydrogen island that Denmark wants to build, and by 2028 they will have more green electricity than they can use, and they'll be converting that into molecules. So very similar strategy to Namibia, and this is why the Department of Green Diplomacy and Climate is a department that obviously should work closely with us to learn from one another. The Dutch, on the other hand, they will receive a lot of these molecules from around the world and then begin to transport them into Germany. So Gasunie, Port of Rotterdam are all very strategic Dutch partners that we can work with. In these slides, we merely just highlight the project. It is a very large undertaking. We're looking to basically build about 7 gigawatts of renewable energy, and then produce about 2 million tons of ammonia to be exported. And we've already started seeing various Dutch partners coming together, whether it's Koole terminals, Port of Rotterdam, as we mentioned, etc. These are the rough timelines. I won't spend too much time here. Needless to say, after 2 years of feasibility, if those feasibility studies are good, and environmentally, socially, technically, and financially we can do this, after a year of fundraising, we should start construction by early 2026, looking to produce the first 1 million tons of ammonia 2 years later, by early 2028. So these are some of the timelines that are associated with the project, but of course we know with complex projects like these we'll have to do a lot of work. This, our visitors would hopefully recognize some of this work. This is a port master plan that essentially has been co-developed by a Namibian company now called Hyphen. Invest International, of course, who've been very strategic in our exploits, our own port of Namport, and then of course the Port of Rotterdam. And just to show members of the media the size of this facility, this is the existing Robert Harbor today as we know it. And this new facility is what will need to be built. Yes, anchored by green ammonia, but really it'll allow us to export other commodities such as zinc, phosphate, manganese, etc. So a very strategic asset. About 500 million euros is what might be spent to build that asset. And of course, the Port of Rotterdam, which is the largest port in Europe, would be partnering the Namibian government to look at that particular facility. This is a desalination plant that will be used to produce about 18 million cubic meters of water, almost the same size as the Orano one. So it will be one of the largest desalination plants in Southern Africa. And of course, our Minister of Agriculture and Water there just said how important this asset is, not just for hydrogen, but you can see we envision giving the town of Lüderitz about 2 million cubic meters of water, pretty much almost for free. And that is obviously going to enable the town of Lüderitz, which I'm showing now, to expand more sustainably. So the town of Lüderitz is pretty small. It houses about, or at least there are about 30 to 40,000 people that stay there. But this blue area here and the red area around it signifies the potential for the town of Lüderitz to expand in order to start housing or at least accommodating some of the people that would be moving into that area. In order to develop that, we've put together about a social economic development framework of about 6 key areas. Of course, focusing on employment, skills development, local procurement, enterprise and supply development, supplementary infrastructure, and of course, corporate social investment. The Dutch businesses have expressed quite an interest to help with some of that, especially Gasunie in terms of significant public infrastructure. These are the rough economics of the project. These numbers will change. What we did want to show is that the shareholding there, the 24% shareholding that the Namibian government has actually negotiated with Hyphen, the way that shareholding will be housed is actually through this solution. And this solution, Comrade President, would really came about from the meeting with our Dutch Prime Minister in Netherlands. In Sharm el-Sheikh. Essentially, what we'll be looking to form is a new fund in Namibia called SDG Namibia 1. This is going to be a certainly one of the first of a kind in Namibia. It's a blended financing infrastructure fund. And this particular fund will house the 40 million euros of grant funding that Invest International actually had sourced, really under a lot of stewardship from the Office of the Prime Minister, of course. So the funding will go here, and it's through this funding that we will actually buy the equity stake in the Hyphen project. So this was a very, very strategic intervention, and of course, two entities will be championing this. The one is Climate Fund Managers, which is a well-renowned manager registered in The Hague. They've deployed about 1.7 billion euros before into essentially climate combating infrastructure around the world. And the other one is our own Environment Investment Fund in Namibia, which of course our Deputy Prime Minister played a very key role in establishing that particular institution. So the Dutch and the Namibians will partner together to form a new fund manager. We've got a new name now. It may not be Harambee Fund Managers, it's likely NH2 Fund Managers. And this fund manager will oversee the running of that fund, which of course will invest not just in Hyphen, but in other projects and infrastructure in Namibia. So this was one of the key fruits from the partnership that really started off in Brussels and blossomed, I think, in Egypt. This is a more technical slide that just shows you that the fund is going to be looking to source capital from various players depending on their risk appetite. So for donors who want to help develop a very early stage concept, that funding will go into a development fund under SDG Namibia 1. Once you start maturing the concept and you're now beginning to construct the project, you can start attracting regional funders like DBSA, 91, ETC. And once the project is up and running, even our own pension funds will start to invest in this particular vehicle. So the strategic nature of the vehicle was to help mobilize local and international and regional capital, and the Dutch was strategic in helping us put that together. This is indeed the office that our Director General mentioned we're now going to put together to help with project managing, obviously, what is a very complex project. This particular office seed capital was actually also provided by the Dutch, so 3 million euros came from Invest International to start actually funding this particular office. And the EU Commission has now actually given 1.2 million euros as well to start helping to fund this office. And as mentioned, this office, of course, will be reporting to the Minister of Mines and Energy. And of course, he will be assisted by the Minister of Finance, the DG of the National Planning Commission, and then, of course, the Minister of Environment. So this particular office becomes a very strategic asset going forward. You know, we really wanted to show the Namibian people where all of this started. Some of you may recognize the two gentlemen there on the photo. This was COP27 in action. Full speed ahead to try and really combat climate change. And I think we started the presentation with one visionary leader, but it was amazing to see others beginning to join our president. And I'm sure we're going to be doing something very special with the Danish Prime Minister as well. And we can't wait to see that. So one of the things we were obviously beginning to prepare for was COP28. And in Namibia, we already have 4 areas that we're going to be focusing on, and we were just going to show those and then finish. So at the top, the Danish Prime Minister mentioned this importance of mobilizing climate financing and how we need to start doing that in detail and how we need to start doing that sustainably. So we believe that establishing this SDG Namibia 1 fund that allows us to crowd in capital from different players and allowing professional fund managers to look at that SDG Namibia fund is a very practical response to how we can mobilize climate financing. In HPP2, the President spoke about the importance of developing a green economy, so using green hydrogen to produce green electricity to start industrializing in a clean way is one way of doing that. The President also mentioned that it was important to develop a blue economy, and Kelp Blue, we're very proud to say, is another one of the products that the ambassador has managed to conjure up from Netherlands. It is a Dutch company that has settled in Lüderitz and is looking to build an underwater seaweed forest, 70,000 hectares large eventually, absolutely. It's actually been recognized by the World Economic Forum as one of the most innovative projects out there. And recently, they've just gotten offtake from Nestle. And so they will now be raising about 1.4 billion Namibian dollars in a blue bond which will be the first in Africa, actually, if not the first in the world. So that begins to talk about, again, mobilizing climate financing. And of course, Kelp Blue will be sequestrating carbon from the air. And our own NAMDIB has actually begun to buy carbon credits, or at least has bought, I think, equity into the company, looking to buy carbon credits from that. So again, HPP2 green and blue economy coming together at COP28. And then, of course, at the bottom there, we are working with the Harvard Kennedy School and Japan to put together a carbon credits platform as well. So we believe those provide for amazing ingredients for us to collaborate again in COP28. And of course, after this delegation, the two teams will start working together in more detail to see what amazing things we could put together at COP28. And we thank you very much for your attention. Thank you.
And the floor is open in case somebody wants to say something, get clarification and so on. Experts are here, not me. I'll just give the floor. The floor is open.
Maybe just to underline the importance of the climate financing, and